Folks, well, there we go. There's my microphone. I missed the unmute button. What's up, everybody? It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical today. We're running it at a bit earlier of a time. Again, we're on the mobile camera right now, the mobile rig. Welcome everybody. Nurgle Matt's in chat. Woody Bear, how's it going? Hope you're all ready for a bit of a fun discussion that I thought we'd have today. Still on the road, heading over to Texas. I'll be there probably tonight for my stream with Angry Joe tomorrow. But I think that one thing I might try to do in the near future, just to sort of, I guess, like stabilize my content schedule a little bit, is get us to a point. I have a Monday morning stream, obviously, that we did yesterday, where we talked about lists and stuff. Between that and assuming that I continue to do Best Earners of 40K on Sundays, I think that's where a lot of our kind of like normal list discussion will end up. I would like to do this video, this stream, around this time, Tuesday mornings, because I have heard from a lot of people when we were discussing it previously that the early morning time is actually better for them. So to tune in. So that might be where the stream moves to. We'll give it a couple weeks to see how that works out. But what I'd like to do on the Tuesday streams, the Tactical Tuesday, is dive into a particular sort of a particular tactical discussion, something that's either going around in the community or that I think is appropriate for the metagame at the time. So last week we talked about Tempestus Aquilons. The week before we talked about things that were improving in the new update, and I think that this is a good place for that show. So let's get back up. David Bowie here. Is my hair all messy? We're on kind of normal hairstyle here. I got my hair cut on Thursday before I left, or Wednesday, I guess. So it's actually not too bad, but it was getting real poofy. It gets incredibly poofy if I leave it go. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to have super long. I had it down to like the small of my back. And I don't know if it looks that good on me anymore, but I kind of want to try it again. But it would take so long for me to get there. Maybe I just got to travel more, you know? But anyway, thanks everyone for coming and hanging out over here. Big thanks to my little hotspot for keeping my internet looking good. But here's what I wanted to do today, folks. I think that it is an interesting discussion. We talk a lot about armies that are overperforming, or armies that are too good, or armies that are incredibly strong in the meta and have to be answered. Well, we don't talk about quite as much as the armies that are doing really badly, for obvious reasons. But I think that it's still a pertinent discussion to have, especially for people who are playing those armies. So what I'd like to do today is peek into some of these armies at the bottom. We're on stat check over here. We're looking at since the Pariah Nexus update in terms of their statistics. And what I'd like to do is take a peek at some of the armies in the bottom over here, especially, I mean, Imperial Agents is kind of obvious, right? Of course, Imperial Agents are towards the bottom. But we have things like Grey Knights, we have factions like Adeptus Mechanicus, even standard Space Marines that are kind of in this like 45% win rate. Doldrums down here, and I think we'll take a look at some of the larger event results and take a peek at what those armies are currently playing, and in order to sort of achieve these negative statistics, I guess. And any ways that we can suss out either to sort of prognosticate any potential buffs to these factions to help them out, or any ways that we can kind of community workshop some winning archetypes for these armies. Because I think there definitely are some instances, Space Marines is a good example, where I think that there are strong archetypes and they're simply not being played. Because I think the Ultramarine Vanguard list is demonstrably good, right? It won a GT last week. And I think that there's probably other lists within that fit that description within that faction, and there's probably more down in sort of this spot down here. Tyranids did awful over the weekend for what they were supposed to do in teams. I know, yeah. I think, I don't know. Tyranids, they're always okay, right? They're like the most aggressively mediocre faction ever made. But yeah, I think the loss of action Spore Mines is like currently killing them in terms of team events. They just simply do not have what it takes to compete with some of the big damage dealers in the metagame. So they have to fall back on their scoring, which is fine, but it's not that great. It used to be excellent, which sort of, I think, buoyed them up for being an attritionally deficit faction with a bunch of real trash data sheets. Knights don't feel great, so they're bullying or being bullied. Yeah, I mean, that's just how Knights are always going to be. Imperial Knights, I think, we're Chaos Knights at 49%, Imperial Knights 51%. They seem fine. Chaos Knights actually like wildly overperformed last week, which was kind of cool to see, because I know a lot of people were like, what? Chaos Knights are... I got some comments on one of my videos, my streams the other day. People were like, Chaos Knights, where they at? They dead. This faction's dead. It's thrown in the garbage. But like you just got buffed. I don't know. You got like 40 free points off on your list. But that's just gonna be how these factions work, right? I think from a conceptual standpoint, if we didn't see like huge paradigm shifts in how the faction is designed at a like genetic level, I don't think that's going to change, right? You're the defense skew vehicle only faction. Of course, either the meta is going to be either susceptible to it or is going to be toxic to it. And there's really no middle ground for those kind of armies, and that's just how it is. Right now, they have them at a pretty stable win rate. Obviously, sometimes Imperial Knights shoot up and Chaos Knights shoot up. It's all based on the metagame, but that's not what's happening right now. They're doing okay. But what I think I want to focus on, first of all, Grey Knights down here at 45% is shocking to me. Absolutely shocking. But I wonder how much they were sort of banking on these like Nemesis Red Knight lists, and those getting hit a couple of different times might be hurting them. Adeptus Mechanicus is also the other one. I think we can touch on but World Eaters for sure, and Space Marines and Black Templars, or Space Marines in general, and Black Templars in specific, if we have the opportunity to. Space Marines are kind of more of a can of worms because I think that they're, I don't know, like rip the Band-Aid off here. I guess BCP relists them as the Stardius right now. It's so hard to look because at Space Marines because there's a lot of specific chapters listed in. Like, does we list Imperial Fists? Okay, that does happen sometimes. It's a low play rate for compliant Space Marines. It is Ultramarines or Gladius Task Force stuff, but this is like kind of, I don't know, sort of just a bunch of stuff. I'm not really sure what the direction is. There's just a bunch of repulsor executioners. It's just kind of whatever. I think that, like, did I just click on the same list twice? Oh, I did. I'm smart. I'm good at this. Don't worry. This one's Dark Angels. All right. So this is just misapplied. All right. I don't know, Chad. Space Marines is a tough nut. It's a tough nut to crack. It's so difficult to discuss because of how big it is. But I think there's a lot of people who are like rocking some of the other sub factions. I do think that it's kind of like the Ultramarines and maybe the Salamanders show, but we'll see how things turn out. Knights need even babier knights. Human knights on horses. Yeah, they're just Bretonians from like Old World. I'm taking my knight lance. Like, oh, cool. Is that like a trio of big knights? Like, no, it's lance formation. There's a little triangle of horsemen. Go. All right. So I think I'd like to start my discussion talking about Grey Knights. So I have I pulled some of the larger events from the last couple of weeks. We don't have a ton of sort of data on this, but we can take a peek at some of these results. We got Gem City, which is a 90-player event. Oh my god. Oh no. This is Grey Knights at Gem City. Oh boy. As well as the two Coventry events. Literally no one played them at the Coventry 2 day. Midmo Maelstrom as well. Yeah, so we can definitely see a shift to being wildly underperforming. But VTC Warhammer 40k has some pretty solidly scoring Grey Knight players, which is good. Now, I do think Grey Knights probably have a little bit of a leg up in these differential systems because they are they can be so scoring focused that the paradigm is different, right? Players are looking for points, less than sort of attritional wins, which is where Grey Knights excel. But I don't know how much that actually adjusts the gameplay on the table. On something with humanites in horses. They're like little robot horses for sure. Won one and run last weekend with Grey Knights. Are you a beast? Yeah, you're definitely above the curve for sure. You're a full 5 points over the win rate, so you might be the greatest player ever. Harder to suss out big codexes whether it's goofy list writing the faction down. Yeah, and that's I think another part of the interesting discussion, right? It is difficult to actually because so many. I think Space Marine specifically, right? So many people just register themselves as other stuff. It's so hard to find the particular stats, right? Like how many Raven Guard players are in any of these events? Like, I have no idea. Are there any Raven Guard? Are there Imperial Fists? Oh, we already looked at that one. What are the other one? Crimson Fists? No. How about Salamanders? Nobody's playing Salamanders. I refuse to believe no one actually registered as Ultramarines. It's insane. That's an insane thing that we just said about. It seems like there's just no Astartes players here anyway, just in general. I think it's fair. All right, so let's talk about some of these lists that are. We'll talk about Grey Knights specifically, and I actually wonder if we can take a peek at what they are losing to as well. Oh, what did I do? Why did I do that? So if we look at the individual pairings, this one cut, right? So it would only be 6. Oh. What? Am I insane, Chad? Where did this player go? Are they loaded? Yeah. Ugh. Tau, an 8990 Tau. Can we talk about this result? Jesus, an 8990 Tau tie. All right, so it's he is here. I don't know why BCP wasn't displaying him to me. What the fuck, BCP? Why do you like this? All right, I would love to go through his matches. And see them. Okay, well, if I search only his last name, it works. Oh, BCP, never change. We love you, buddy. We love you. Bizarre. All right, so it was a win against Eldar, which I think Grey Knights are generally fairly round 1 and round 2. Oh, there it goes. A win against Eldar, which I think Grey Knights are generally pretty favored into because they can access their. What is things changing on my screen? They can access their sort of light utility units really easily and kill them. And Eldar are very bad at holding table space, so that one makes a little bit more sense. Adeptus Custodes they fell down to. Now let's take a peek at the list that we're looking at specifically here. There's Double Brotherhood Librarian plus Castle and Crow. Castle and Crow had a 10-model Purifier Squad. Now, the Purifier Squad's kind of a spicy inclusion because they don't tend to see a lot of play right now. They're sort of dedicated infantry sweepers, which especially if you're running like Incinerator teams on your Brotherhood Terminators, which we are, you don't necessarily tend to need. We also see occasionally Paladin squads with just like a ton of Incinerators and just popping in and absolutely like ruining infantry. Just pulling up the Purifier datasheet real quick here so we can take a peek at it. So each one of them shoots a Storm Bolter plus their Purifying Flames. It's 1 attack, anti-infantry 2 in your cover. They get bonuses if they are below starting strength, and then they get an additional attack from Castellan Crow on the Purifying Flame attack. So each model is attacking a total of 6 times. And then Castellan Crow, I think, gets a bonus attack as well because his is more powerful. So you're shooting 60 times from this unit, but it doesn't have like damage output, right? And it is ignoring cover, but it's only AP 1. And the Stormbolters have no AP at all. So the Purifiers themselves are like incredibly good at this infantry sweeping. But if you hit stuff where they're not going to be that useful, it's a lot of points, right? 340 points that we could be putting into heavier damage output, like heavier damage dealers. They are, to be fair, fairly efficient, I guess. 25 points a model for like an elite infantry profile is pretty okay. But if you don't need the weapon profiles that they're bringing, then you're not feeling that good. Move my mic closer to my face. No, it's on my headset.
Make sure that it's. I guess I can turn it up. I need a new microphone, chat. I was actually I was like shopping around them yesterday. But I think if I'm going to stream from this this laptop here, then I'm going to need a better microphone, I think. What's the audio issue, chat? My voice was cutting. Yeah, I don't have anything that would be cutting it out, so unfortunately, I don't know what would be causing it. I can turn myself up though. Turn up the gain. Yeah, it might have just been that it was quiet. So it was like sort of losing the last couple of milliseconds or whatever. All right. Anyway. Oh, this is actually spicy. I'm actually noticing this now on this list. There's this Cerastus Knight Lancer. So I guess we were hoping that the Purifiers and the Incinerator guys would clear infantry for us, and then we would have this Lancer to be able to sort of follow up and act as the armor cruncher. The downside is that the Knight lists or the Knight inclusions in Grey Knights, I think tend to kind of stick your army, which is something that I found that Grey Knights actually don't super love. Because Grey Knights are so contingent on being flexible, having this big thing that is kind of stuck in place can create situations where your opponent like has an anchor point that they can attack, whereas normally the Grey Knight army is like wildly flexible. But this list is a little all over the place. The inclusion of Purifiers and a Cerastus Lancer is pretty spicy for sure. Too bad Lancer dies after the first kill. I mean, sometimes. Sometimes you do just make all your 4-up involts. Having a bait-in 4-up is actually pretty spicy, but yeah, the downside is that if you can't kill everything that can kill it, it becomes really awkward. Which means I think they usually benefit from having a lot of shooting in your list as well, on top of the like their own melee, so they can come in and then you can consistently be dealing damage to your opponent like over the Lancer, right? The Lancer can either force opponents to come in and fight you, or your shooting can neutralize their shooting and the Lancer gets to commit sort of for free. Those are the situations where I've seen the Cerastus Lancer be like super powerful, but this is doesn't feel like a list that really synergizes particularly well with it. This might not be the best example to look at because it's like sort of highly non-standard. Over here we see Grey Knights. Rocking a champion with Domina Liber Demonica. So it's +1 to wound in melee, I believe, and +1 damage against demons. 2 Brotherhood Librarians, 1 with Sigil, 1 with Wrath. That's the +1 to charge. 2 Brotherhood Terminator squads, 2 strikes, Interceptor, and a bunch of Nemesis Dread Knights, and a Purgation squad with Incinerators. So I like the Purgation Incinerator squad. I think they're still a little expensive probably because they are they can't use their ability if they equip an Incinerator. They just lose their data sheet ability essentially, except for the Justicar. I think he can shoot a Stormbolter through walls, but everyone else just can't do anything. But getting 4 incinerators on a little package that you don't need to spend sort of Terminator points on, I think is pretty nice, or a Paladin points on. How many wounds is the Cerastus Lancer? I believe it's 24. I'll just pull up his data sheet real quick here, chat. 25, excuse me. I was off by 1. Ugh. Despicable. Despicable. And they have the baked in 4+ the 4+ invulnerable save, which is nice. That's like sort of the big reason you take them. The additional movement, a 4+ invulnerable save, and the free tank shock is all good. I mean, obviously its offensive profile is really strong. It does feel a little spiky outside of Imperial Knights too, because Imperial Knights will typically take Layla the Tyrant and get that floating reroll, which makes the lance attack, because it hits on 2s and wounds on 2s basically against anything in the game. It makes that lance attack really consistent. Unless you roll 2 or +1s in one of those rolls, you're going to be rerolling. But not having access to that does make them a little bit awkward. I think the normal take there is Canis Rex for like 20 more points, right? Because he sort of like has a bunch of redundancy baked into his own profile, plus he shoots better, and he hits situationally harder. The downside is the movement. He's really slow, and he doesn't have a permanent invulnerable save, but the offensive output is like really what you kind of want from him anyway. So this list is a little bit more standard. The Brotherhood Champion's kind of spicy. That's a bit of a non-standard inclusion. What should we go down to here? Canis Rex 40 more points now. Canis Rex is 450, is that right? Am I crazy? Or is he 470? Because the Cerastus Lancer is 430, I think. Yeah, 430 for the Lancer. Brotherhood Championship is fun with fights first and a 3-inch drop plus enhancement to stop shooting. The Sigil of Exigence? Like I like it, it's interesting that it gives you kind of an anti-melee threat, but typically you're just Mist of Deimosing yourself, or you want to set up situations where your opponent's forced to trigger Mist of Deimos, so you're trying to avoid melees, like you're trying to avoid getting touched in melee anyway. Although this is a Nemesis Dread Knight list, which is much tougher to do that on. It's the Terminator list that usually try to abuse Mist of Deimos. The Nemesis Dread Knight lists have to commit at some point. So we lost to what looks like sort of standard Champions of Russ. That can't be right. Okay. PCP is struggling today, chat. Oh my god. Ah! What is happening? Okay. So it was lost to Champions of Russ. It was there a second ago. Oh, no, there, now it's back. And now it will go back. It looks like one against World Eaters. I wonder if the Brotherhood Champion was transformative in that matchup, actually, because having fight first into World Eaters is kind of nice. One against World Eaters again. Jesus, we're a World Eaters matchup specialist here. Lost against Tau Empire. This is Kyle Grundy though. He's like an incredibly strong Tau player, so I don't know if you can read too hard into that. In that particular matchup, Tau also does seem like it's a little problematic for the Nemesis Dread Knight builds because like you have limited sigilling. You're not that good at sort of like pinning people into melee, and Tau just pick up Dread Knights all day. They're like AP2, AP3, ignore cover, with like a bunch of sort of mid-strength multi-damage attacks. And the Nemesis Dread Knights being low toughness means that if they ever get pinned out, like caught out in the open, they actually just get lit up really hard. Lost to Adeptus Sororitas. Now, I know that some people were optimistic about the Grey Knight matchup into Adeptus Sororitas. This is only Triumph. It is running Bringers of the Flame. 2 Immolators, 2 Arcoflagellants, 2 Castigators, Dominion Squad, Triple Exorcist, the Seraphim Squad, and a Novitiate Squad. No, yeah, so we do have the 1 Dominion Squad, so we can push super far forward. There's a lot of board control in this list. And a little bit of a downside is the fact that Sisters can't have a lot of these little utility units that can kind of surround the table. You can kill them with your Stormbolters and things pretty easily, but they can screen off relevant areas for the Nemesis Dread Knights to show up, and then that protects the Sisters' like backline shooting here, so that can be problematic for the Dread Knight builds. And then lost to Necrons again. This is a Hypercrypt Legion. Running a bunch of Necron Warriors. Canoptic Graves, Doomsday Arcs. Doomsday Arcs are kind of a nightmare for the Dread Knights to fight in a straight up battle. And then you're staring down the barrel of trying to deal with this big Necron Warrior brick without, 600 points of your biggest beaters. Grey Knights definitely have the attack volume to kill sort of mass warriors if they have the opportunity to, but if they can't do it while being shot at, I think it gets problematic. So I think one thing might be that, as we pull in here and look at some of these other lists, I do wonder if the Grey Knight reliance on Nemesis Dread Knights is the problematic part for them. The Dread Knights tend to be pretty, I would say fairly inconsistent, especially if you don't have Tech Marines. And even when you have Tech Marines, they kind of like glue your army together, which you don't super love. They also, they only work command phase, right? So if you teleport, then suddenly you like lose your Tech Marine buff, which is stupid. But it is what it is. And so having a unit that hits on 3s and shooting with kind of a low to mid volume of attacks at like really mediocre stats, right? Strength 10, AP 2, 3 damage with only 6 attacks means you probably convert maybe one of them every time you shoot. Which means that each individual Nemesis Dread Knight is actually kind of low value against most targets. Which I think becomes maybe a problem. I wonder if the lists that we saw, I mean, the most impressive list that I saw over the weekend, now this was a team format, obviously, but the most impressive list I saw over the weekend was David Ozawa's running mass Terminator units, just regular ass Terminators. I think he had ran 1 Dread Knight just to have a Demon Hammer in the, he was running great swords, those Dread Knights, by the way. Hitting on 2s, base 2 up weapon skill is actually kind of sick. The downside, obviously, is that the strength and damage are relatively low, but the weapon skill bonus is nice. But they also have a sweep profile, which is good too, because the Dread Knights can get stuck in with a bunch of guys. I kind of wish the Greatsword was like 1 pip somewhere higher, like +1 strength, like +1 AP or +1 damage, because I think it would actually be a real contest between that and the hammer. The hammer is sometimes you just need the armor cracking so much from the big hammer attack. So but I think that the focus may need to be on playing the scoring game over the like just sort of the raw output of the Nemesis Dread Knights. And I think that now that they've been upcharged and people are prepared for them, and especially because it feels to me like the profiles that kill Nemesis Dread Knights are kind of more widely available, or at least more widely played, where you get these like there's a lot of factions running things like Predator Destructors, right, with AP bonuses on them. And so you start to see this glut, like from Cast Space Marines and a lot of Space Marine lists of these, like, and especially Castigators, right? You talk about Adeptus Sororitas, where you talk about this glut of like AP Strength 9, AP 2, 3 damage, which is almost exactly where you want to be to kill specifically Nemesis Dread Knights. And I think that might be part of the problem that this faction is experiencing. Nemesis Dread Knights need to stack their attacks to actually kill something. Yeah, but the problem there is that, like, you have to stack your attacks, right? You have to put all the Nemesis Dread Knights into one spot in order to pool their fire, and maybe you'll get something. And if you can set that up in a position where your opponent can't counterattack you, then that's all great. But oftentimes that means that if the opponent has their army sort of condensed and well supported, that oftentimes means that you're just committing to a fight. And I think that Grey Knights lose almost every time where they commit to like a straight up battle. You know what I mean? Like Grey Knights have the bonus, the benefit of basically infinite mobility. But the problem is that when you construct a game plan around not using that mobility, and I don't want to say Dread Knights like don't move, right? They're very fast by themselves, but putting yourself in a position where you're not using that mobility by just sort of trying to fight your opponent straight up, I think does the faction a disservice. It obviously has worked in the past when the Nemesis Dread Knight profile is efficient. They're very good, but it doesn't feel like they're particularly efficient now. Dread Knights to T10. I think it's okay that Dread Knights are low toughness. Like, they're high save. They actually present a really interesting sort of defensive profile because they are kind of like fodder to the autocannon, which, to be honest, I don't know if the game has enough of. It is a problem that autocannons are very efficient right now, which is kind of pushing them down. But I think that the other problem with the faction is an over-reliance on Nemesis Dread Knights, right? Because like we just talked about, if Nemesis Dread Knights are good, then Grey Knights are also good. So if we're looking at ways to improve the faction overall, I think if you want them to be a mono list where all they do is play Dread Knights, which has happened to Grey Knights many times in the past, and I'm sure will happen in the future, you just continue to buff the Dread Knight. I think where the faction actually wants to be is to take 1 or 2 Dread Knights for their mostly probably for their melee profile. Honestly, like their shooting feels like it's an afterthought. But if you can get if you need something that has a high strength characteristic, I think the Dread Knight's basically the only place you're getting it in the entire faction. They also are fast. And they have the capacity to use teleport assault, which a lot of their other like heavy ranged profiles don't do. But I think that the faction idealistically wants to be a Terminator faction, right? And every time I look at speaking personally, which is obviously a biased take, but every time I look at a Grey Knight list and I see that it is Dread Knight focus versus Terminator focus, I breathe a sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because I think the Terminator and character focused armies are absolutely a fucking nightmare. I think that the problem is that they're much more difficult to play. So a lot of people don't necessarily want to play them, but they're so difficult to like squeeze points out of that it's absolutely horrendous. Autocannon's not good against anything? That's a hot take, chat. That is a very hot take. I would tell that to all of the Chaos Space Marine, Adeptus Sororitas, and Imperial Guard players out there who are massing autocannons. I guess it depends on your autocannon profile. If you're like the man portable, like strike 7 AP 1/2 damage, sure, yeah, that one's bad. But if you're the big vehicle one and you put buffs on them, they are very widely played. They do require buffs though, for sure. But they're probably one of the best recipients of buffs too. Found that secondaries that need actions hurt Grey Knights. Gave up March for Death by lifting units off the table. Yeah, that is problematic for sure. I think that we might also be seeing a bit of a follow through on the Pariah Nexus sort of mission format, right? Because it moved a ton of emphasis from scoring to killing, and the factions that are not good at killing have suffered as a result. And I think Grey Knights are just a recipient of that as well. So I think that there's like sort of some metagame problems with it. I think that the mission format's probably toxic to their playstyle. But I also think that there is an overabundance of those Nemesis Dread Knight builds. I think Nemesis Dread Knights are good in a small number in order to like apply pressure in particular areas of the battlefield. But the list spamming Nemesis Dread Knights, do you feel like they're gonna be underperforming as we move on? Oh, you mean Invictor Tactical Warsuit autocannons are bad? Man, sure. That's very specific. That's a very specific one. Listen, I started playing suppressors. Let me tell you, those autocannons, 25 points, 75 points a unit, and you get 9, 8, 1, 2 damage shots. Those autocannons are good because they're cheap. Delicious. Delicious, delicious. But the other option is that you could just not take Invictor Tactical Warsuits. I think that might potentially improve your experience. Replace those with Predator Destructors. I think your opinion on autocannons might change. Are any of the Grey Knight flyers good? I don't think so. The problem with Grey Knight's vehicles is that they don't get teleport assault. So you are just playing an entirely different game, right? If you start running them, it's like it's a totally different situation. I think that there are some instances where you play like Land Raiders just to add that like ranged punch to your army. Razorbacks maybe. Well, although I'm less convinced about that. But I think that you're doing yourself a disservice by basically removing your army ability from a large proportion of your team. And especially when those are points that could be going to like an allied unit that might be more efficient in that situation. Having servitors attack Marine and Razorbacks the reroll is the thing. It's an interesting question. Do the Grey Knight servitors get good guns? I think that there was a hot minute where you played mass servitors as like a gun platform. I will. So, did they ever? I guess I gotta look this up. I actually do not remember now. Has the interaction with servitor retinue ever been clarified, chat? Because I know that for a hot minute you could embark multiple servitor units together, and I don't know if that has ever changed. I guess it's worth looking up real quick. Nope, I think it's been explicitly clarified that you can do it. Can you use Servitor Retinue to join Servitor unit to another attached unit consisting of a Brotherhood Tech Marine and a Servitors unit? Yes. So you can have up to 10 Servitors. That like combo is still active. Or excuse me, 8 Servitors plus the Tech Marine, so 9 models. Obviously only one of those, if you took a Razorback, only one could go in. But each one of them only gets 2 heavy weapons. So you could have 4 multi-meltas. I don't know. It's actually kind of cute. They do not teleport though. That's the problem. Oh no, just kidding. When the Brotherhood Tech Marine is leading, they have Deep Strike and teleport. No, all right. I'm a moron. Is that better than a Nemesis Dread Knight, chat? It only costs like 165 points. and you get 8 multi-melta shots to hit on 3s. EU servitors. They're suppressor cannons, not murder cannons. Yeah, they're there for covering fire, not for killing you. They died to Overwatch. I mean, maybe they're a 4+ save. Like, you have 4 members of the unit that you can assign wounds to before they die. I know that this was, and really the only reason I'm talking about it is that I know that this is a combination that was very widely played right at the beginning of the edition, but I think it sort of fell out of favor. So they have to kill 5 servitors to actually remove any of your damage output, and you're a base 4-up. So, I mean, if you're like deep strike on a Land Raider Redeemer and lose all your servitors, like, yeah, of course. But obviously that has to be a consideration that you make. Purgation squads are not doing their job. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Purgation squads are very bad. I don't know what you do to purgation squads to make it better. I think maybe they just need a better weapon profile potentially. Like the problem is that the baseline like side cannon profile. You want to talk about autocannon profiles that are bad? Oh boy, the base side cannon profile is horrible, absolutely horrible. And when that's all your unit's doing, and you're paying 120 points for it, it feels not great. So I think they need maybe a more dedicated sort of anti-tank role potentially. You talking about no Demon Seed buffs? Apparently not, chat. I was looking at these stats this morning. Demons at 55% win rate. That honestly was like emboldened me. I was like, it's user error. Any problem I have with Chaos Demons is only user error. I also refuse. I don't know. I tend to play like pretty zany lists, so that's probably me too. And I'm a terrible player who doesn't pre-measure their movement and didn't realize that Granite Clearlands can't move through gaps in the walls. Hashtag don't watch my VOD from last night's game. Look, yucky. Yeah. So I think Grey Knights are maybe so it's a great point that I think Mark brought up in the chat over there, that I think Grey Knights are suffering from a couple different things. I think the metagame has shifted so that weapon profiles that kill their stuff is pretty popular. Nemesis Dread Knights aren't quite pulling their weight as much as they could be. And I think the mission document has also hurt them quite a bit, right? Especially now that we're also seeing like changes to secret missions and stuff too, where Grey Knights like your YOLO plays could be worse. Or on the flip side too, if your Grey Knights are spending the entire game removing primary or secondary from their opponent, and they can recuperate that with secret missions, and that's even worse for Grey Knights as well. If your opponent's winning on attrition, but you've kept them down on primary and then they just secret mission you, then it's sad. It makes you sad. It makes you sad panda. So I think that's part of the problem. I think I would like to see Grey Knights pivot to play more high like volume, and especially more of their Terminator units, because I think they're really good. There are some damage output issues with lists like that, but the old school like triple Vortex of Doom and white knuckle through it is probably not too bad, especially with how efficient Brotherhood Terminator units are now, and how difficult they are to get to grips with. The indirect torrent nerf, I mean, it did, like, I don't want to say that it didn't hit them, but, like, how many people were playing, like, all the incinerator, like, purgation squads, and specifically using them to kill utility through walls? It was, like, a lot of times you saw the one purgation squad in there, but, I guess, like, I don't know if I saw that combination quite enough to say whether or not it was, like, particularly transformative to the faction. It does suck because they got caught in the crossfire of a much better interaction in Thousand Suns, but I don't know if that was like a huge hit to the faction in general. It's dead if you have equipped incinerators. Yeah, it just doesn't do anything. which is a problem for sure. I wonder if they should maybe make it so that, like, I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff you could do. I wonder if they'll update it so that it's like modal. Like, what if you could extend their range or fire through walls or something? So they had another way to use incinerators, for example. Give Granite Terminators storm shields. It would be pretty silly, I think. I don't know if Granite Terminators need to be 4 wounds. Like a portal gun? Yeah, I mean they like that. That's ideally right. The intention of the effect, right? All right, folks. World Eaters, I don't know if I have too much input into. I think that World Eaters might suffer specifically from some matchup issues. I have a sneaking suspicion that secret missions are also pretty like hell for World Eaters too. At least they were prior to the secret mission nerf. Because a lot of times like World Eaters would deplete themselves, killing their opponent, and if you could get up in Leviathan, you could get up heavily enough on primary that they would just kill you. And even if you wiped out the World Eater's army, then it was GG. But now that you can secret mission end of the game, kill the World Eater's army, and then go score a bunch of primary points, as much as it is worse than it was previously. I don't know if that's something that we can particularly like peek out in terms of their list composition. I know that a lot of the players who are a lot of like the sort of World Eaters specialists have kind of like settled on one list. Sort of the usually it's like Invocatus, Angron, the +1 character, whether it's MOE or a Berserker Glaive, or even a helmet, Juggernaut Lord, and then they're buffing typically either 1 Berserker unit or like 2 Jackals, and like a combination of like 5 8-bound. So I don't know. I think that there's a little bit more place to play with ranged attacks in World Eaters than people give them credit for. But the fact that sort of every faction specialist has basically locked into one particular list composition, then I think speaks to the fact that I imagine that's sort of kind of going to be experimentally the best one. But I'd also like to talk about Adeptus Mechanicus, because I am surprised that this Adeptus Mechanicus showing 39% currently is incredible, especially for some of the power that we saw them apply over the weekend. We do see some pretty solid Adeptus Mechanicus, some solid play from Adeptus Mechanicus specialists. It's pretty good from the Coventry, Jesus. Coventry 3-day. 6 and 2 results from some 2 separate players. We also have a 4 and 4 back here. A couple 4 and 4s. Let's see if the... and then a couple of sort of middling results over from Gem City. What about the other Coventry event? Nobody played them at the other Coventry event. But we did see some success with them at Mid-Missouri. So let's talk about some of these like sort of lists that are doing kind of mediocre and discuss those. Now, I will say that I do think that Skitarii Hunter cohort is like certainly the best list. And I think that problematically for the faction, it does open up some particular matchups that are that can be an issue. If you have the capacity to kill their models, like to just sweep infantry like it's nothing, Skitarii Hunter cohort feels so bad. If you're like dropping in with stuff, getting tapped off the table with Overwatch, like pushing forward, getting heroically intervened and killed or whatever, it can be problematic, especially if your opponent can kill you on your turn and you can't do enough to body block them in. But I know that's so I think there is probably a problem with this list being a relative infantry skew that can create those sort of bad situations. Admech are too expensive. Yeah, that's true. That's not exactly what we're discussing here, but it's definitely a strike against the faction. The 3D printer is pretty cheap. I don't know. But yeah, they are for on a point per dollar basis. They are insane, absolutely insane. All right, we've got 2 Skitarii Marshals in this build, 3 Skitarii Marshals, excuse me, 1 Techno-Archaeologist, Skitarii Rangers, Vanguard, 2 Dune Riders, Cerberus Raiders ×3, Infiltrators ×3, Rust Stalkers ×3, Sidonian Dragoons ×3. There are no Pteraxii in this list. That's fascinating. Did we just like find the breakpoint here, chat? All right, well, I'm sensing a theme. This is a Rad Zone core. That's cool. That's what we're talking about, and unfortunately, kind of like pushes us to the is evidence of the fact that you're on Skitarii Hunter or you feel sad about your life. It's all the oil margaritas. Indeed. It seems like the list that didn't do as well didn't have Pteraxii, and the lists that did do well had Pteraxii. Is that the case elsewhere? Have we solved the problem? This is a Cybernetica cohort. Yeah, so I also think maybe in terms of win rate, the full power of the faction is their Skitarii Hunter cohort, but it seems like a lot of people are playing more interesting, like more fun detachments, just to be cool. This one has Grey Knight Terminators in it. That's fun. Which with a faction with as low representation as the Adeptus Mechanicus have, if we look here, they only have 100 games played. Then obviously that's going to skew the results quite a bit. So I have a sneaking suspicion that we're not really looking at kind of the full power of Mechanicus. The downside, of course, is that means their internal balance is fucked. I have played against some Rad Zone core that I was interested in. This is a Skitarii Hunter cohort with Onagers and Cataphron Breachers. It does have 1 Pteraxii in it, but that's about it. Yeah, it feels like the I don't know. At least looking at these lists, it seems like the more Pteraxii you have in your list, the higher your win rate is. But I think that is maybe, that's probably just an issue that the faction has, kind of generally, where they're sort of very quickly becoming kind of a mono build, and I don't know what you do. I guess we would need to see probably detachments change. But I also think that part of the issue is that the like base data sheets are maybe not the base data sheets that. What am I trying to say here? So a lot of the benefit of Skitarii Hunter cohort, right, is that it allows you to just spam bodies on the table, and especially very fast bodies. But what exactly you're spamming doesn't make a huge difference, right? Whether the model that you have on the table is like a Pteraxii or a Skitarii Ranger or a Vanguard doesn't really matter for the most part, unless you're like shooting somebody with a sterilizer. And so and I'm sure somebody in the chat can correct you if I'm wrong, but it feels like the benefit that you have is just simply that you have a high model count and a high body count, and so you're able to like take that table presence. Whereas the actual like rules on their data sheets, for the most part, are sort of like irrelevant once you get to your position, which I think is a problem that of the faction, right? Like the numbers and the rules on their cards are just sort of like not really hugely transformative, and instead what they're getting the benefit of is their sort of kind of capacity to deliver them to relevant areas of the battlefield. So, like, the power of the army is just having a bunch of bodies, not necessarily having those bodies be, like, individually effective. And I think that might be an issue that the that sort of the factions experiences. Seems like Imperial Guard shoots better than Admech. I mean, that's true, I think, demonstrably. But that's always been the case. Imperial Guard, Games Workshop's kind of idea of Imperial Guard is that they're sort of this combo assembly army, where once you assemble the combo, they will beat literally anything in the game in a straight-up fight. Like, once you've applied your orders and used your stratagems and used your aura effects, like a Leman Russ battle tank outshoots literally everything. But it has to be outside of their artillery. It has to be a straight-up fight, and you have to have all that stuff in place in order for it to work. That does mean that Astra Militarum, I think, are just like straight up the best gun line in 40k in basically any edition. But it also means that they're kind of inflexible. So, yeah, it seems like for the time being, what we have to do is take flying guys in Adeptus Mechanicus to see more success. On a longer time frame, though, I don't know what the solution there is to sort of to keep the faction relevant, because as we move to a position where assuming that counters arise for these these body skews, because I don't know if the true power of Kroot Hunting Pack has entirely been unlocked yet, chat. I think that there are going to be some Horde mode armies. We also have the Gene Stealer cults looking incredibly strong with their new buffs. I think that this Hunter cohort style is going to get passively answered by the community, and whether Adeptus Mechanicus can pivot, I'm not sure about, because it seems like anytime they stray from the path, they suffer quite a bit. Maybe they just need a higher save. I don't know. I think that right now they sort of lack an identity, right? Like we just talked about Astra Militarum, right? We can identify exactly what Astra Militarum does. They put their buffs on their guys, and then they shoot, and the guys, they shoot good. So if you stand in front of their army, they'll straight up kill you. If you haven't killed the officers, if you haven't battle shocked them, if you haven't engaged them in melee, or like done anything to stop them, they'll just straight up kill you. Adeptus Mechanicus are like, hey, we have like a weird sub-team of battle line synergy. We have like a weird combat doctrine style army ability, and also like that's it. We just do like weird stuff sometimes, and I think that's sort of an issue with the Codex. It doesn't feel like the Codex is one thing that it necessarily wants to do. It just has a series of like kind of mediocre buffs that it applies to datasheets. Loves the Razone combo with Breachers with Sustain 1 ruling everything. Yeah. The Cataphront Breacher in Razone is incredible for sure, and definitely I think Razone has like a kind of I don't know. It's definitely not bad, and it certainly has play as just sort of a brawler army, right? You just take these Cataphrons that have these huge buffs on them from their enhancements and their characters, and then they just like sweep all before them. But also that you are like hanging your hat on another heavy infantry, what is essentially a heavy infantry unit, which can get a little spicy sometimes, Obviously, we just talked about how Grey Knights are okay with doing that, but the downside is that, or the difference is that Grey Knights have missive demos. Although they don't shoot good, so it is what it is. So that one, yeah, I'm curious about. I'm interested to see if they see any updates in the future. It seems like for now, this Skitarii Hunter cohort with the Mass Pteraxii and acting as like kind of a staged jam list where you're just throwing super fast units to block your opponent in. Does feel pretty strong. All right. So the last thing I think that it's interesting to discuss is probably Space Marines. I do have to pop off in a little bit here, chat, because I can't stay here forever. They are expensive for the Cataphront Breachers. Yeah, I mean rightly so though, right? That is like sort of a mainstay of your army. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where people are landing with the Astartes. So, Gem City GT, this is 90 players this past weekend, saw a very wide breadth of Space Marine play. 5 players out of 90 registered Classic Space Marines. Vanilla Marines are under a 40% win rate. So the top placer here was running an Ultramarine Vanguard, which I think is like the cutting edge, right? I think that it's not controversial to say that this is the best Space Marine army, hands down, right? It feels like they fall off so hard if you don't play that, though. Or even apparently if you do play that. This list was 2-1-2, I think. Yeah. It's kind of an awkward... It's a middling win rate. But as soon as we jump into... we're playing Iron Hands in this one. Suddenly our win rate tanks. If we're playing Salamanders... It's a bit of a weird Salamanders list. With Adept of the Codex. Huh. Okay. That one's not doing so hot either. And this is another Ultramarine Vanguard. With 2 Vindicators in it. That is surprising, actually. So a little bit of an underperformance of even the Ultramarine Vanguard Spearhead. So certainly we saw kind of a spread on what is ostensibly the best army in the game. When we jumped out of that to play other stuff, the win rate didn't look so hot. But we also saw kind of a middling result, a good result, and a bad result from even that same list. So it definitely seems like that list is pretty inconsistent for sure. They don't get enough models. Every time we play Space Marines, get shot off the board. Part of that is, part of that is by design. Space Marines do tend to actually because they have these little tiny units, right? They're always playing like 6-man or 5-man units. They tend to have a lot of throwaways that they like. The idea is kind of to trade them for efficiency. So part of the issue, I think, is definitely that Space Marines are seeing some play from folks who are rocking kind of the non-standard stuff. But I can't say that like Ultramarine Gladius Task Force is a particularly bad composition, right? So the fact that we're not like this is a fairly normal list, running a Pulsar Executioner, a Lancer, so a couple long-range punchers, some utility, 1 aggressor squad for the Fire Discipline combo. It's aggressors, not eradicators, which is controversial maybe. But this is like a fairly standard list. This list went 0-5. So I think that it might be safe to say that there is just a sort of base level problem with the Astartes faction. Sorry, was I looking at the wrong list here? No, this is an entirely different, very similar looking build for regular Ultramarines. It went 3-2, or 2-3. And this is an Ultramarine Vanguard Spearhead. This one went 2-3. So yeah, even the more classic Marine armies are really struggling as well. So I think, I don't know. I don't think that it's fair to say that like Marine players just have to get good, because it does seem like they are, across a pretty wide swath of players really struggling with what is even ostensibly the most cutting edge build in the faction. Obviously, there is there is evidence of this army being successful. But there are, for every player who's achieving a positive win rate, there are apparently 4 who are losing with the exact same army. When you go shot for shot, you're always out of models by turn 4. Yeah. So I wonder if we talked about this previously. I wonder if part of the issue is that the Marine Codex is built around this sort of like these like little tiny teams, right? These little tiny 5-man teams who are trying to accomplish things, and usually you have to spend them to do utility stuff. So you're paying you're paying between 60 and 90 points for your utility units. more than most factions are paying for theirs, because most factions get them for like 40 to 50. And you're trading those units away, but the problem is that they can't discount those units at all, because the actually high performant Marine armies, like if I guess it's maybe controversial to say Dark Angels are high performing right now. I think that there's a little bit of lag between Dark Angels and Space Wolves, because I think a lot of the players who are rocking them like super highly dropped them, which probably tanked their win rate quite a bit, because they got a little nerfage. But Blood Angels are looking at 50%. Like, Blood Angels seem okay. The new Blood Angels army, we saw them playing on the stream, and they seemed powerful, but pretty counterable. But those factions were kind of the reason for those units getting upcharged. I think that legitimately, we need to see Marines with a different set of points values from their non-compliant counterparts. I think that Marines need to get an exclusive discount on especially stuff like utility, right? Like Jump Pack Assault Intercessors in Blood Angels were ridiculously overpowered. Insane. But Jump Pack Assault Intercessors in Ultramarines, significantly less good. Probably still better than 80 points, but you could probably cut them 5 points for for compliant chapters over the non-compliant chapters. I think it'd be okay. And if there's a lot of instances like that, right? Land Raider Redeemers were kind of like the whole. They basically built an entire detachment around Land Raider Redeemers, and then because they were taken so widely, you widely upcharge them. Although I guess they were taken pretty widely in Ultramarines, to be fair. I don't know if any of those particular sub-factions were using them too highly, but come around to locking out deviant chapters from the Codex attachments. Yeah, that might do it too. Then you could, but I think the problem still persists, right? I don't know how often we're seeing like Gladius play in Dark Angels, for example, and it doing super well. Let's take a peek here. I guess actually we can see it. Can we see a detachment breakdown? Oh, this is Grey Knights. Nope, I don't want to see that. What did I just do? All right. So we saw them do really well with Stormlands. That was a single player, though. I think running this. 22 total games. 4 players played Stormlands Dark Angels. Which is funny. I actually have a video on my VOD channel. I played against Frankie running Dark Angels Stormlands way back in the day, like months ago. And he was just like, oh, I'm just trying out this new build. And now people are running, which is funny. Vanguard Spearhead, a couple of people are in. A lot of the games in Gladius Task Force. But I think that will probably drop as we move on. And then a couple are in Iron Storm. So I get like Gladius Task Force, I think is the biggest offender because it's such a good baseline detachment. But Dark Angels are, I think, really the only ones that use it. You'd almost never play Blood Angels outside of their chapter detachments because they're so strong. Space Wolves, I guess, are also rocking Vanguard and Stormlands, yeah. So yeah, that might go pretty far to repair the issues. Although I think that all that ends up doing is nerfing some of the particular sub factions and not really answering the problem of the faction itself. I think that the problem is that Space Marines as a compliant faction need to be stronger. Like, I don't know if it unlike we just talked about Adeptus Mechanicus, like, right? We can't really point to a particular strategy or unit that we can try to identify that is kind of that edge there, because I think like Space Marine players are trying, man, and it's just not working. And I think that the compliant Marine chapters might just be bad. I think that's where we're at, chat. Is the Vanguard ran as Ultramarines? Yes. Vanguard is I would say that if you are playing compliant chapters, 90% of the time you're going to run Ultramarines, hands down. Their characters are simply too strong to leave at home. If you're like, the characters are the reason that you're playing Codex Marines and not a non-compliant chapter. Otherwise, you would just play a compliant chapter. I think that there is a argument to be made for salamanders in some very specific builds, but other than those two, there's really no reason to competitively to play any of the other chapters, which sucks. But unless they get their own special abilities or whatever, that's just how it is. Their characters, they have less access to characters. The character's not as good as Ultramarine characters, and, so, and it's just, you might as well just play the stuff that gets Marnius Calgar. Marnius Calgar and Uriel Ventress are pretty good, so you might as well just play those guys. Space Marines need a mid-table bully. Yeah, maybe you could see something like Assault Terminators get like significantly better in Marines. That would be kind of cool. Ideally, they're supposed to have Redemptor Dreadnoughts, but again, Dark Angels got Redemptor Dreadnoughts super nerfed. And so now Redemptor Dreadnoughts are like wildly overcosted. So I think, honestly, I think that they just need different points values than the non-compliant chapters. You might want to be like take the non-compliant, the Codex compliant attachments away from the non-compliant chapters, but I think that Space Marines just need to pay Space Marine points costs for things, and everyone else gets to pay their own way. Firestorm Assault is an easy way to make that better. I can match other armies' detachment to use the same idea, such as Retaliation Cadre. I mean, it's basically the same as Retaliation Cadre. Like, the detachment ability is slightly different. It's a carbon copy of Bringers of Flame. Bringers of Flame literally copy and pasted the detachment ability from Firestorm Assault Force. But I think they also copied several stratagems too. A Firestorm Assault Force, I think, is definitely like a third place split finisher. Right? Gladius Task Force is amazing. Ironstorm Spearhead is good. I think Firestorm Assault Force is the third one. If it had a way to fall back and shoot, I think it would be fucking insane. I think that many people would play it. The problem is that it doesn't. And it gets a little bit awkward. Thunderhammer Terminators need some rules. Yeah, Terminators in general I think need some rules, but definitely the Assault Terminator squad in Marines is like super not very good. They kind of like hit mediocre and don't tank super well and are expensive. Oh, okay, cool. I love that. Thank you. Redeemer's a good midfield ability, but again, it's almost 300 points, right? Like, it's so tough because these units that they're supposed to be taking the center of the table with are extremely expensive. Not, to be fair, I think that their Land Raider Redeemer is way more worthy of that 200 plus point price point than the Redemptor Dreadnought is. But it is what it is. Give compliant chapters the old oath. Oof. I think that might be too good. I think you might just return back to everyone playing regular Space Marines. Aggressors need points drops, make them a good unit, so compliance stuff has a real melee unit. So I think part of the problem with the melee stuff is that Space Marines are move 6, right? You basically didn't see aggressors play like Marines like can make melee stuff effective if they're in Gladius or Stormlance, right? But the problem is their speed characteristic is like so low that it just gets it gets really tough to commit those guys unless you're bringing a Land Raider or something. It's unlike Stormlance or like Space Wolves, just as like high base movement characteristics. Blood Angels, high base movement characteristics, like fucking detachment wide advance and charge, or army wide advance and charge on each of their detachments. They all, and plus they have high, like everybody's coming in at move 12 plus, and Marines just don't have that. It used to be Vanguard veterans, which is why they were so overplayed, but it would be difficult to find a place in the roster for a unit like that. Which I think, to be fair, is okay. I think it's okay if Marines become this like close-range shooting army, which I actually kind of prefer them as, to be honest. Where they're using like, you know, Stern Guard veteran squads and aggressor squads and eradicators to just shoot you off the middle instead of charging necessarily. And then they have like dedicated melee units like the Assault Intercessor Captain, for example, for when they really need to answer some questions. Like I don't think that every single Space Marine army needs to have a fast melee unit. They have long range shooting covered, they have close range shooting covered. To some extent, like arguably they have sort of tank units covered. And they also have like fast utility. Whether or not they also need fast melee on top of that is maybe an open question. I don't necessarily think that they do, but I do think that they could stand to have things like their regular shooters buffed. Maybe you do something like make Oath the Moment reroll if your strength is low or something. I don't know. Why not just force people to take a supplement and keep Space Marines bad? Fair enough, chat. Fuck them. Why not? Fuck them. The poor Ultramarines players. Give Ultramarines a supplement and just axe all the other stuff. A Redemptor can barely kill a Neurolictor in one turn with a charge. Yeah, they actually, like, at math, on math, they don't, right? They should hit 3, wound, like, 2.5, and the Neurolictor should save, like, 1 point. So the Neurolictor, on average, like, takes 5 damage. Obviously, it's not exactly 5 damage, because it's in multiples of 3. But, like, they should take between 3 and 6 damage, which is not enough to kill one Neurolictor. Like, they don't... If you tank shock them, you might get a Neurolictor. Although, to be fair, Neurolictors are incredibly tanky, so that's not too surprising. But, like, yeah, the Redemptor's melee profile is not good. It's so funny, because it's like how far the mighty have fallen from previous editions, where the thing was, like, strength 14, D3 plus 3 damage. Now it's like, AP2, 3 damage. Yeah. Feels bad, man. Most chapter masters need to be ludicrously good and don't get anything else. Yeah, we talked about that previously. I think, yeah, making the benefit, like, that is why you play Ultramarines, right? Is because all the characters are amazing. Making the benefit of playing your non-compliant chapters be a, like, ludicrously undercosted character it might also be a path to victory for sure. The problem is that, you know, I don't know how thematic it is, right? I don't know how excited people are for, like, their 25-point Corsaro Khan, who's still a kind of like do nothing of a character, but at least they get him and it's fun and cool. Redemptors need to be around 180. That does feel better. They're like 210 right now, right? It's so much. Holy shit. Oh man. One base reason to feel good, so you feel like buying the supplement chapter of the month. Yeah, it feels like that so too sometimes. The number of times I see like just all blue blooded, like Blood Angels or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough, dude. That's the way to play Space Marines, though. Never paint them a compliant chapter color, and just always play whatever chapter's cool at the time. Why are Redemptors so pricey? Because of Dark Angels. It was all Dark Angels' fault. Dark Angels like spammed them in the OG Lion Storm list. You played them with a Stormraven gunship, and I think that was actually the army being played in the in that that Stormraven like drama video. You play them with a Stormraven gunship, and then you could disembark one on the first turn and like run it to the center, like run it up the middle, put an adept of the Omnissiah next to it. So it was -1 damage, AOC'd, with a damage blank, and then you had like 2 more follow that up, and then Azrael behind them, and that was like the list was basically just like 4 big like brick vehicles that were all -1 damage with adept of the Omnissiah like hovering around that would just like feed into the center. It got super tough to beat, but it was dark. It was like made possible by Azrael for the most part. Aggressors crazy costed. Yeah, I didn't like that. Aggressors, it felt like kept paying the price for Fire Discipline being good, which I definitely don't think was the correct the correct play for sure. I'm just realizing the time, chat. I will need to sign off here so I can clean up all my shit before I get back on the road. So yeah, I think this was an interesting discussion. I think that there definitely are some good takeaways. That we can peek into the lists, which lists are doing good and doing poorly. I do think that factions like Adeptus Mechanicus and Grey Knights that are not performing particularly well do have viable archetypes. I don't know what's happening with World Eaters, to be honest. Like, it seems like they're in a rough spot, but I think that they're salvageable. Space Marines, I have no idea, man. I'm lost for words that they're still doing so badly. But I don't know. I don't know, chat. But yeah, please come hang out with me over on Joe's stream tomorrow, twitch.tv/AngryJoeShow. It's going to be tomorrow evening. And otherwise, stay tuned for more content. I don't know if I'm going to have anything up for y'all for the remainder of this week because I will be traveling through probably Thursday or Friday. So once I get back, we'll have some stuff going on. I'm like 80% of the way through editing a Tyrannosaurus video, a super duper long video. I also have another meme list video for like ready, sort of recorded. That one's also sitting on my hard drive as well. So there's a bunch of content that's just chilling there that I haven't had the opportunity to finish yet. So that's all coming. And then in 2 weeks, I have the standoff live coverage as well. That's going to be the second week of November. That is November. Can I grab my calendar? Nope. I want to say 15th and 16th. I'm going to say that and then hope it's correct. All right, chat. That's going to be it for me. Thanks, everyone, for chilling with me. And I'll see you in the next one.